My name is Astrid Lindstrom. I am 74 years old, and for most of my life, I was a ghost. Not a literal one, of course, but a professional one. For 40 years, I was a public relations executive, a crisis manager. My job was to be the invisible hand that guided the narrative, the silent voice that shaped the story. I worked in a world of press releases, of carefully worded statements, of off-the-record briefings. I was a master of the art of perception. I could take a corporate scandal and spin it into a tale of redemption. I could transform a disgraced politician into a misunderstood victim. I knew that the truth is often irrelevant. What matters is the story people believe. I was, in essence, a professional, high-stakes storyteller. My entire career was built on one simple principle: whoever controls the narrative, controls the world. My own narrative, however, was one I had willingly, lovingly, and foolishly allowed to be hijacked. Since my husband, Robert, passed away 5 years ago, the silence in our large, quiet house became a physical presence, a constant, aching void. My world, once a bustling symphony of deadlines and ringing phones, shrank to the quiet ticking of a grandfather clock. And into that void stepped my granddaughter, Lily. Lily is my son's only child, a beautiful, vibrant, and thoroughly modern young woman. She is 22 years old, and her ambition is to be famous. Not for any particular talent, not for singing, or acting, or writing, but simply for being herself. She's an influencer, a creature of the internet, a woman whose entire existence is a carefully curated performance for an audience of strangers. After Robert's death, in my loneliness, I made her the centerpiece of my life. I saw her ambition not as shallow, but as a modern form of the same drive that had propelled me in my own career. I wanted to help her. I wanted to be relevant in her glittering, fast-paced world. And so, I made the greatest sacrifice a storyteller can make. I ceded control of my own story. I became her silent, primary investor. My considerable savings, the nest egg I had so carefully built over a lifetime of shrewd crisis management, was repurposed to fund her brand. I paid for her designer clothes, her expensive camera equipment, her trips to exotic locations that would serve as backdrops for her photos. My home, once a sanctuary of quiet, elegant taste, was transformed into her personal content studio. My living room, with its good light, became the set for her day in the life videos. My garden, which I had cultivated as a place of peace, became the backdrop for her sponsored posts about organic tea. I went even further. I used my old contacts, the network I had spent a lifetime building, to open doors for her. I called in favors from editors at magazines, from producers at television shows. I, who had once operated in the highest echelons of media, was now using my hard-won capital to get my granddaughter a mention in a fashion blog. She moved in with me, to save money, she'd said, and to keep you company, Grandma. I was so grateful for the company that I did not see the Trojan horse. I was not her grandmother. I was her landlady, her benefactor, and, most importantly, her unpaid, in-house publicist. I did it because I loved her, because she was a link to my son, a spark of youth in my quiet, graying world. I thought I was helping her build a future. I did not realize I was simply providing the raw materials for her to build it on the ashes of my own dignity. The humiliation was not a single, explosive event. It was a slow, creeping, digital erosion of my soul. Living with Lily was like living inside a reality television show for which I had not signed a release form. Every moment was a potential piece of content. Every conversation was a potential soundbite. The camera on her phone was a third, unblinking eye in our home, and it was almost always pointed at me. At first, it was benign, even charming. She would post videos of us baking together, using my recipes, of course, or of me telling an old, sanitized story from my career. Her followers loved it. "Your grandma is so cute," they would comment. #Grandma goals. I was a prop, a recurring character in the Lily show, the wise, adorable, slightly dotty old grandma. I played my part because it seemed to make her happy. But as her follower count grew, so did her appetite for more engaging, more dramatic content. The curated, wholesome moments were no longer enough. She needed conflict. She needed drama. She needed a villain. And in the quiet, two-person cast of our home, that role fell to me. She began to post videos that subtly, cleverly, painted me as a difficult, out-of-touch old woman. A video of me struggling to use the new smart television with a caption, "Grandma versus Technology, the Eternal Struggle." A clip of me expressing concern about a skimpy outfit she was wearing, edited to make me sound like a prudish, judgmental shrew. She was a master of the edit, the subtle twist of context. It was a skill, I noted with a grim, professional irony, that she had likely inherited from me. I endured it. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it was the price of her company, the currency of her world. I was a crisis manager who was steadfastly ignoring the escalating crisis in her own home. The final, unforgivable breach, the act that transformed my passive grief into cold, strategic fury, occurred on a day that was already sacred and raw with pain. It was the 5th anniversary of my husband's death. It was a quiet, rainy afternoon. I had told Lily I wished to be alone. I was in the living room, my living room, which now felt like her set. I had opened an old leather-bound photo album, and I was looking at pictures of Robert and me. A picture of our wedding day. A picture of us holding our son David for the first time. A picture of us on our last vacation together, his arm around me, his face, even then, etched with the illness that would soon take him, but his eyes full of love. The grief, which I usually kept carefully boxed and archived, washed over me in a sudden, overwhelming wave. My vision blurred. A deep, racking sob escaped me. I hunched over the album, the tears I had held back for so long finally falling, splashing onto the plastic-covered pages. It was a moment of pure, private, and profound sorrow. I did not hear her enter the room. I did not see her. I was lost in my own world of memory and pain. A few days later, I was scrolling through my social media feed, a habit I had developed to keep up with Lily's world. And then I saw it. A new video she had posted. The thumbnail was a close-up of my face, twisted in grief, tears streaming down my cheeks. My blood ran cold. I clicked on it. It was the footage from the other day. She had filmed me. Secretly. A tight, intrusive, close-up shot of my raw, unfiltered sorrow. But she had edited. She had set my tears to a soundtrack of a sappy, over-the-top, comical soap opera theme. And she had added a caption, in a big, bubbly pink font. It read, "OMG, Grandma is so dramatic. I asked her to help me with a sponsored post, and she had a total meltdown. The Oscar for Best Performance goes to #Drama Keen, #Grandma Tantrum, #Living with Family." I watched the video, and the world seemed to slow down. The sound of the ridiculous music, the sight of my own profound grief, repackaged as a joke for public consumption. I scrolled down. The video had already gone viral. There were thousands of comments. "Elmeo, your grandma is a trip. Mine does the same thing for attention. So manipulative. Tell her to get a grip. Lol, you're a saint for putting up with her, Lily." It was a digital mob, a chorus of strangers, all laughing at a pain they did not understand. A pain my own granddaughter had served up to them as entertainment. She hadn't just filmed me. She had taken the most sacred, vulnerable moment of my life, the memory of my dead husband, and she had twisted it, profaned it, and sold it for likes. I looked at her, sitting across the living room, bathed in the glow of her phone, a small, satisfied smile on her face as she watched the numbers on her video climb. She was not a granddaughter. She was not a human being. She was a monster, a new, thoroughly modern kind of monster who devoured real human emotion and excreted it as digital content. In that moment, the loving, lonely, accommodating grandmother who had made excuses for her, who had funded her, who had sacrificed her own home and her own history for her, died. She did not die with a sob. She died with a click of a mouse. In her place, Astrid Lindstrom, the crisis manager, the ghost, the woman who had buried the secrets of the rich and powerful for 40 years, came back from the dead. And she knew, with the cold, absolute certainty of a professional, that this was the greatest crisis of her life. And she knew, as she looked at her granddaughter's smug, smiling face, that she had all the material she needed to contain it. The story was about to change. And for the first time in a very long time, I was going to be the one to write it. I sat in my armchair, the phone in my hand still glowing with the obscene spectacle of my own grief, and I felt a shift in my very cellular structure. The warm, soft, grandmotherly part of me, the part that had been willing to absorb endless small humiliations in exchange for the illusion of companionship, went cold and then hard, like liquid steel being quenched in icy water. The public relations expert, the crisis manager who had been in a deep 5-year retirement, was now wide awake. And she was looking at the situation not as a personal tragedy, but as a professional problem. A hostile narrative had been launched against her. Her brand, the brand of a dignified, private, grieving widow, had been severely damaged. A counter-narrative was required. My mind, the mind that had navigated corporate scandals and political meltdowns, began to work with a familiar, chilling efficiency. I was no longer a grandmother looking at her granddaughter. I was a senior strategist analyzing a rogue client who had gone off message and was now a threat to the entire firm. Crisis assessment. My granddaughter Lily has publicly disseminated a false and defamatory narrative, portraying me as emotionally unstable for the purpose of generating personal engagement and social capital. The current story, as believed by her 1 million followers, is that I am a dramatic, manipulative old woman. This narrative is damaging, false, and unacceptable. Strategic objective: to neutralize the hostile narrative, to correct the public record, to re-establish control over my own story, and, as a secondary but essential objective, to dismantle the platform that my opponent is using to launch her attacks. A crisis manager does not just win the argument, she silences the source of the problem. Methodology: a direct emotional confrontation was out of the question. That would be amateurish. It would be playing her game on her turf. It would create more content for her, more drama. She would film my anger, edit it, and post it as Grandma's second meltdown. No, the response could not be emotional. It had to be strategic, fact-based, and executed on a platform of my own choosing. I would not attack her. I would not even mention her name. I would simply release a series of well-documented, fact-checked, and utterly devastating truths. I would fight her fire not with more fire, but with a flood of ice-cold, verifiable facts. My secret weapon. The thought came to me with the clean, beautiful clarity of a perfect campaign slogan. For the past year, living with Lily had provided me with more than just heartache. It had provided me with a treasure trove of opposition research. The archivist in me, the part that instinctively observes and retains information, had been working overtime. Specifically, I thought of her laptop. It was a sleek, expensive machine I had bought for her. And she was careless. She never logged out. She never closed her files. And on her desktop, in a folder brazenly labeled Lily's World, was her entire, unvarnished, and often sordid digital life. I had stumbled upon it months ago, looking for a tax document she had asked me to print. I had seen enough to be horrified, and had quickly closed the folder, wanting to respect her privacy, wanting to unsee what I had seen. But a part of my mind, the crisis manager's part, had filed it away. And a few weeks later, in a moment of foresight, I now saw as a stroke of genius, I had taken a small encrypted USB drive from my old office supplies, and I had made a complete copy of the folder's contents. I had told myself it was an insurance policy, a paranoid tic from a lifetime of dealing with treacherous clients. I now saw it for what it was, a fully loaded weapon, waiting for the moment it would be needed. That folder was not just a collection of files. It was a complete, unedited documentary of the real Lily, the one who existed behind the filtered, smiling, wholesome facade she presented to the world. It contained email exchanges with brands, in which she drastically inflated her engagement numbers to secure higher-paying sponsorships. Verifiable fraud. In screenshots of direct message conversations with her best friends, in which she viciously mocked them, stole their content ideas, and revealed their personal secrets. Verifiable betrayal. Spreadsheets detailing her charity work, showing that of the thousands of dollars she had solicited from her followers for various causes, only a tiny fraction had ever made it to the actual charities. The rest had been absorbed as administrative costs, funding her lifestyle. Verifiable theft. And most damningly, a series of video files, outtakes from her perfect life logs. Videos of her screaming at waiters. Videos of her returning expensive clothes after wearing them for a photo shoot. A video of her coaching her own parents on how to act more adorably middle class for a My Roots segment she was planning. It was a complete and total record of a life built on lies. It was a crisis manager's dream. It was a granddaughter's worst nightmare. My decision was made. It was not a decision of anger, but of professional necessity. I would not be emotional. I would be surgical. I would be anonymous. That evening, while Lily was out at a trendy restaurant, celebrating the success of her viral video, I went to work. I did not use my own computer. I used an old, untraceable laptop from my husband's study. I created a new, secure email address. And then, I created a new anonymous blog and a series of anonymous social media accounts. I called them the Influencer's Ledger. The name was perfect. It was professional, dispassionate, and hinted at a final moral accounting. The bio for the accounts was simple, anonymously documenting the gap between the curated image and the verifiable truth. All posts are fact-based and supported by primary source documents. I did not post everything at once. That would be a clumsy, emotional data dump. A true campaign is a slow, methodical drip, a narrative that builds over time, creating suspense, allowing the public to become invested in the story. My first post was simple. It was a teaser. Title: A Question of Authenticity. In the world of social media, we are sold stories. But what happens when the story is a lie? In the coming days, we will begin to examine the business practices of one of a very popular, beloved lifestyle influencer. We will not name her. We will simply present the evidence. We invite you, the public, to be the judge. I attached a single, heavily redacted document, a screenshot of an email with the names and brands blacked out, showing the influencer promising a brand-guaranteed engagement of over 20% on a sponsored post. It was a small, seemingly innocuous detail, but to anyone in the industry, it was a massive red flag. No one can guarantee engagement. It was the first, tiny crack in the dam. I hit publish. The first shot in my silent digital war had been fired. I closed the laptop. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I felt no satisfaction, no glee. I felt only the cold, quiet, and deeply familiar calm of a crisis that was now officially and expertly under control. The first post from the influencer's ledger landed with the quiet impact of a pebble dropped into a vast, still pond. The ripples at first were small. A few hundred followers on the new accounts, mostly industry insiders and gossip-hungry media watchers, intrigued by the anonymous, professional tone. I waited 2 days. I watched as speculation began to bubble in online forums. Who was the blog about? Was it real? Then, I published the second post. Title: The Friendship Fraud. Body: Our influencer has built her brand on the image of a loyal, supportive friend. The girl's girl. We have obtained a series of direct message conversations between the influencer and her closest friends. We have redacted the names of the friends to protect their privacy. The words of the influencer, however, are presented unedited. This time, I released a series of screenshots. They showed Lily, in her own words, viciously mocking the appearance of her maid of honor from a recent wedding. They showed her stealing a content idea from another influencer friend, and then denying it. They showed her revealing a deeply personal secret about a friend who had confided in her, all for the sake of a juicy bit of gossip. The effect was immediate and electric. The follower count on the influencer's ledger jumped from hundreds to tens of thousands in a matter of hours. The story was picked up by major online gossip sites. The comments sections exploded. The tone was no longer just curious. It was angry. The audience, the one she had so carefully cultivated, was beginning to feel betrayed. They had been sold a story of female empowerment, and the ledger was now showing a story of petty, backstabbing cruelty. I watched all of this from the quiet of my study, a ghost in the machine of my own creation. Lily was starting to panic. I could see it. She was in the living room, constantly on her phone, her face pale and drawn. She posted a series of frantic, defensive stories on her own account. "There's a horrible, anonymous blog spreading lies about me," she declared, her voice trembling with a well-rehearsed performance of victimhood. "Please don't believe these baseless attacks. My friends and I are closer than ever." It was a classic, amateur crisis management mistake. By acknowledging the anonymous blog, she had given it legitimacy. She had confirmed she was its subject. I waited another 48 hours, letting her denials circulate, letting her loyal followers rush to her defense. I let her build her platform of lies a little higher. And then, I pushed it over. My third post was the kill shot. Title: The Charity Case. Last spring, our influencer launched a widely publicized campaign to raise money for a local animal shelter. She shared tearful videos from the shelter. She posted pictures of herself cuddling rescue puppies, and she urged her millions of followers to donate to a fund she had personally established. Her followers, in an act of beautiful generosity, donated over $50,000. But a close examination of the public records of the charity and the influencer's own financial records tells a different story. This time, the evidence was not screenshots of private messages. It was cold, hard, and public. I posted a copy of the animal shelter's annual donation report. It showed a single, anonymous donation of $5,000. Then, I posted a series of redacted bank statements from a secondary account Lily had opened, an account I had discovered in the folder. It showed the $50,000 in donations coming in, and it showed a series of subsequent withdrawals. $10,000 for a business trip to Bali. $15,000 for a down payment on a new luxury car. $5,000 for a shopping spree at Chanel. The evidence was irrefutable. It was not just betrayal. It was theft. It was the exploitation of her followers' own kindness and generosity. The internet, which had been a tool for her vanity, now turned on her with the swift, brutal, and unforgiving fury of a digital mob. The hashtag #LilyThelier began to trend. The gossip sites went into a frenzy. Major news outlets picked up the story. The brands that had sponsored her began to issue public statements, severing all ties. Her best friends, seeing the evidence of her betrayal, began to speak to the press, confirming the stories. Her world, the beautiful, glittering, and entirely fraudulent world she had built, was not just collapsing. It was being burned to the ground, and I was the one who had quietly, anonymously, and expertly lit the match. She was trapped. She was in a full-blown Category 5 public relations hurricane, and the crisis manager who could have saved her was the very person who had created the storm. She spent the next few days in a state of siege, locked in her room, as the digital world she had so desperately wanted to conquer devoured her alive. The constant pinging of notifications on her phone, once a source of validation, was now the sound of 1,000 accusations. The final act came a week after the first post. A broken, tear-stained, and utterly defeated Lily came to me. She didn't knock on my door. She simply walked in and fell to her knees, her body convulsing with sobs. The performance was over. This was real. "Grandma," she wept, her voice a ragged, unrecognizable sound. "Make it stop. Please. I'll do anything. Just make it stop." I looked down at her, the girl who had mocked my own tears, now drowning in her own. I felt no pity. I felt no anger. I felt nothing at all. This was not about emotion. This was about business. This was the final phase of the crisis management plan. "There is only one way to make it stop, Lily," I said, my voice quiet, calm, and utterly devoid of any grandmotherly warmth. "You know what it is. You will issue a full, public, and unreserved apology." "I will," she sobbed. "I will." "You will do it on video," I continued, my voice as crisp as a legal brief. "Live, no edits, no script. And you will apologize not just to your followers, not just to the brands you defrauded, not just to the friends you betrayed. You will begin by apologizing to me." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a final, flickering spark of defiance. But she saw the look on my face, the look of a woman who held all the cards, and the spark died. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Yeah. I had won. I had not just corrected the record. I had seized control of the entire narrative, and the final chapter would be written on my terms. The public apology was scheduled for the following evening. It was to be a live broadcast from Lily's main social media account, the very platform she had used to humiliate me. There were no negotiations over the terms. I had dictated them, and she, in her state of utter desperation, had accepted them without a single amendment. The power dynamic had been completely and irrevocably inverted. I was no longer the silent subject of her content. I was the executive producer of her final, humiliating performance. I did not help her prepare. I did not offer her advice on what to say or how to say it. The crisis manager in me knew that the most powerful apology is one that is raw, unscripted, and clearly born of genuine desperation. My only instruction was a single cold command: tell the truth, all of it. That evening, I sat in my armchair in the living room, a silent observer. The room was set up like a makeshift television studio. Lily had positioned her phone on a tripod, the harsh, unforgiving ring light illuminating her face. She was pale, her eyes red and swollen. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, penitent-looking gray sweater. She was a picture of carefully constructed contrition. But beneath the performance, her terror was real. She went live. The number of viewers skyrocketed in seconds, tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The world had gathered to watch the public execution of the Internet Queen. She began to speak, her voice trembling. "Hi, everyone," she whispered. I know I have a lot of explaining to do." And then, she did it. Haltingly, painfully, she confessed. She confessed to inflating her numbers, to betraying her friends, to misusing the charity funds. And then, she came to the final, and for me, the only important part of her confession. Her eyes, for the first time, met mine from across the room. And worst of all," she stammered, the words catching in her throat, I betrayed a member of my own family. My grandmother." She told the story. She told them about my husband's death, about my grief, and about how she had secretly filmed my tears and turned them into a joke for their entertainment. As she spoke, the tears she shed were no longer performative. They were real. They were the hot, bitter tears of a person who has finally been forced to look at the ugly, unvarnished truth of their own actions. "The video was a lie," she sobbed. She wasn't being dramatic. She was heartbroken. And I was a monster. I took her deepest pain, and I sold it for likes. There is no excuse. There is no apology that is enough. I am so sorry, Grandma. She looked at me, her face a mask of pure, abject misery. She was waiting for a sign, a nod, a flicker of forgiveness. I gave her nothing. I simply sat there, my expression impassive, a silent, implacable judge. My personal feelings were irrelevant. This was a public relations transaction. She had publicly damaged my reputation, and now she had publicly corrected the record. The terms of the agreement had been met. The broadcast ended. The collapse was absolute. The Internet, which had built her up, had now completely and utterly destroyed her. Her name became a byword for influencer fraud. The few sponsors who hadn't already dropped her did so now. Her followers, The ones who hadn't already left in disgust, now left in droves. Her career, the one she had sacrificed her own integrity and my dignity to build, was over. It had died, live, in front of 500,000 people. The days that followed were a quiet, gray affair. Lily did not leave her room. My son and daughter-in-law, who had been the silent, enabling beneficiaries of her brief fame, finally arrived at the house, their faces a mixture of anger and shame. They did not yell at me. They had seen what I was capable of. They simply packed Lily's things, a sad, silent procession of designer clothes and camera equipment. As they were about to leave, my son, David, turned to me. "Was it worth it, Mother?" he asked, his voice low and bitter. "Was it worth destroying your own granddaughter to prove a point?" I looked at him, at the weak, foolish man my son had become. And for the first time, I gave him a piece of the truth. "This wasn't about proving a point, David," I said, my voice cold and clear. "This was a crisis management operation. Your daughter launched a hostile, defamatory campaign against me. I, in turn, launched a counter-campaign based on verifiable facts. My campaign was more successful." The end. He stared at me, unable to comprehend a world that was not governed by messy, familial emotions, but by the cold, hard logic of strategy. He shook his head and left. I watched them drive away. The house was finally, truly, and blessedly silent. The ghost had done her work. The crisis was contained. My old life ended the day my granddaughter's career did. My new life began the next morning with the simple act of deleting an account. I went to my husband's old laptop. I logged into the influencer's ledger. The blog and its associated accounts now had millions of followers. It had become a phenomenon, a digital guillotine for the frauds of the internet age. I could have kept it. I could have become a new kind of influencer myself, a powerful, anonymous arbiter of online truth. But that was never the point. The campaign had achieved its objective. To continue it would be to engage in a war that was already won. A good crisis manager knows when to declare victory and leave the field. I wrote one final post. Title: "The ledger is closed." Buddy, the truth has been told. The record has been corrected. Our work here is done. And then, with a single, satisfying click, I deleted it all. The blog, the social media accounts, the anonymous email. The ghost vanished back into the ether from which she had come. The first thing I did was to reclaim my home. I hired a team of cleaners. I had them scrub every room, wash every surface, as if to physically cleanse the house of the toxic residue of Lily's ambition. I rearranged the furniture, moving my favorite armchair back into the spot of good light in the living room. I filled the house with flowers, with the scent of lemon polish and old books. I made it my sanctuary again. My life did not become large or loud. It became quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. It was not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of peace. The silence of a narrative that is finally, completely my own. I did not need to become a digital warrior. My career was over, but I realized that my knowledge, my experience, was still a valuable asset. I called the local university, the one where I had guest lectured years ago. I offered to teach a pro bono, non-credit seminar for students in their public relations program. The title of the course was Crisis Management in the Digital Age. It became the most popular seminar on campus. I didn't teach from textbooks. I taught from experience. I taught them about the power of a narrative, about the importance of truth, and about the brutal, unforgiving nature of a lie in the age of the internet. My students, these bright, ambitious young people, did not see a cute, dotty old grandma. They saw a master of the craft. They saw Astrid Lindstrom. And in their respect, in their eager, intelligent questions, I found a sense of purpose I thought I had lost forever. I never heard from Lily again. I have no doubt that she will, in time, rebrand herself. She will craft a new narrative, a story of redemption, of lessons learned. That is the nature of the world she lives in. But her story is no longer my concern. I have taken my own name back from her, and I will not allow it to be a footnote in her next chapter. This evening, I am sitting in my living room, in my armchair, in my spot of good light. The house is quiet. It smells of lemon polish and old books. I am preparing my lecture for tomorrow's seminar. The topic is a case study, an anonymous one, of course, about a young influencer whose brand was built on a foundation of lies. I spent a lifetime managing the stories of others. I learned, in the most painful way possible, that the most important story you will ever control is your own. You must be the executive producer. You must be the final editor. You must be willing to fight for your own narrative, to protect it from those who would twist it, mock it, or sell it for likes. My voice, my story, my truth, they are not for sale. They are not content. They are mine. And the ledger, finally, is balanced.